If you haven't heard of the legend that Brian Clough was, you're not alone, considering he was an enigma before the Premier League was even established in 1992. In fact, the Premier League's establishment coincided with his farewell from football management, as his last season in charge of Nottingham Forest ended in relegation from the first ever Premier League season. It was a famous saying back in the day that Clough was the greatest manager that England never had. That statement holds true to this day. The country that invented the game has always struggled to find a capable English manager to lead the national team. The appointment of Thomas Tuchel as the current England manager is not a surprise at all, considering how there are such few capable managers from the country itself. Remember the 2 Champions League trophies that Nottingham Forest proudly display on their mantle? That was Clough's doing. While he reached such great heights with Derby County and Forest from the late 60s to the early 90s, the most peculiar tenure of his career came in the middle of these 2 jobs. The story of him becoming the manager of Leeds United for 44 days will keep you on the edge of your seat. His story is so vast and interesting that we simply couldn't do it justice in one video alone. This is part 1 of Brian Clough's legendary tale. It will focus on his man management, style, and revolutionary ways of creating a club's identity. Part 2 will focus on his Forest days and delve into the more tactical side of his management. Brian Clough was born in 1935 in Middlesbrough and developed as a player in their youth setup. He was one of the most promising strikers they had in the academy, and his senior goal scoring record proves just that. He played for Borough for 6 years and in 222 appearances scored 204 goals. Clough is the 3rd highest all-time goal scorer in the club's history to this day. This is where he became close with the Borough goalkeeper, Peter Taylor. He would go on to become an integral part of Clough's managerial career. He spent the last 3 years of his career at rival club Sunderland after one of his many transfer requests was finally accepted in 1961. He scored 63 goals for them in 74 appearances. On a cold December match day in icy conditions and relentless rain, he collided with the goalkeeper so badly that he tore his knee ligaments. Back in those days, an ACL tear meant the end of a player's career. He tried to return after 2 years, but could only manage 3 games before being forced to retire 3 days before his 30th birthday. He was immediately pulled towards management and at the age of 30 became the youngest manager in the league for Hartlepool United. The first order of business was to ask Peter Taylor to join his side as his assistant. This was the start of what would soon become the most iconic duo in the world. When the cunning chairman, Ernest Ord, sacked Taylor, stating he couldn't afford to pay him anymore, Clough said it was either both of them or none of them. So he was sacked as well. But the board had seen the potential in the duo and revised a coup to overthrow the chairman and reinstatement. Slowly but surely their standings improved, and 3 players in the squad would follow Clough on his journey ahead to Derby County. In 1967, Derby County offered the duo a chance to manage their struggling side in the 2nd division. Everyone else thought it was a hopeless venture, but Clough saw an opportunity. This would be a running theme in his career, the ability to recognise potential where others saw definitive failure. He came in and instilled 3 tactical principles that exuded simplicity but effectiveness. Build a team that passed the ball well, work tirelessly, and play confidently. It sounds easy enough, but remember, this was over half a century ago, and things worked differently back then. Similar to how Clough recognised potential in hopeless situations, he was brilliant at finding hidden gem players. He built Derby from the ground up and signed underrated players for dirt cheap prices. This included Roy McFarland, John O'Hare, and Archie Gemmill, to name a few. The players believed in his vision and didn't bat an eye when he told them to clean the dressing room themselves. This was unprecedented back then because the players had an air of superiority about themselves and considered all this as measly work that was below them. But it was another example of how he would instill discipline into his squad and make them appreciate their standing in society. He laid the foundations in his first year, and then in the 1968-69 season, the unexpected happened. Clough led Derby to the top of the second division table to get promoted. They went 22 matches undefeated to make a new club record. But he wasn't done and made sure that his players didn't get complacent. He knew how slippery the slope was for newly promoted sides, so he made the squad work even harder in their first season in the top tier of English football, and the result was a 4th place finish for a newly promoted Derby. The next season wasn't as spectacular, and they finished 9th in the league. Reporters clamoured on about the beginner's luck and how the 4th place finish was a total fluke. This simply egged Clough on to prove them wrong again. The 1971-72 season saw one of the most intense title races, with Leeds, Liverpool, Manchester City and underdogs Derby County vying for top spot. Derby closed their season with a crucial win against Liverpool, placing them at the top of the table with 58 points. However, their fate was still uncertain as both Liverpool and Leeds had one match left. Leeds, sitting on 57 points, faced Wolves, while Liverpool, with 56 points, were set to play Arsenal. The title race was far from over. With a superior goal difference, Leeds only needed a draw to win the league, while Liverpool needed to win against the Gunners. Arsenal held Liverpool to a goalless draw, and Wolves beat Leeds 2-1 at the Molineux. For the first time in their 88-year-long history, Derby County claimed the First Division title. 1972 was a year of rife controversies with Clough at the centre. He was outspoken and fearless and had no problem in saying the unfiltered truth out loud. Quite like Mourinho, he used the press to his advantage, and his charismatic personality easily swayed the listeners. In August of that year, he refused to go to the Netherlands and West Germany for their pre-season tour if he couldn't take his family along. Derby chairman Sam Longson reminded him that it was a work trip, not a vacation. But the manager sent his assistant Taylor instead and didn't travel with the squad. This was the first of many issues that the chairman and manager would continue to face. Another recurring theme in his career was signing players without consulting the board. In August 1972, he and Taylor signed David Nish from Leicester for a record fee of £225,000 without telling the Derby board. The board warned him that this was not to be repeated under any circumstances without their approval. In September of that year, Derby played Liverpool and were losing 1-0 before overcoming the deficit to win 2-1. But Clough wasn't happy, particularly with the home support. He didn't hold back in the press, calling out fans for only being loud at the end when they were winning. While they couldn't defend their title in 1972-73, their European campaign was amazing. They reached the semi-final against Juventus. The first leg in Turin ended in a 3-1 defeat for Clough, and he was absolutely rattled by the referee's decisions. He refused to answer the Italian reporters and only said he didn't talk to cheating. This was very normal for him, and exactly why he was a threat to the board, the FA, and influential figures like Manchester United manager Matt Busby, England manager Alf Ramsey, and most famously the Leeds manager Don Revie. During the middle of the title-winning season in 1972, Clough and Taylor had resigned from Derby for a few hours. They only came back when Longson offered them more money. Longson absolutely hated the duo, but couldn't deny how well the club was doing because of them. He had asked Clough to stop making a nuisance of the club's hierarchy in the media and prohibited him from drinking on Derby premises. Soon after, Taylor's role in the operation came into question, and he was asked to explain why the club employed him. On October 1973, Longson went to the board asking them to sack the duo, but he couldn't convince the majority of members. The manager and his assistant had hoped to repeat history like they had done at Hartlepool by getting the chairman sacked, but they failed to do so with Longson. They sent in their resignation, which Longson happily accepted on the 16th of October 1973. The backroom staff had such an attachment to him that they walked out of the club with him. What followed was a huge uproar by the fans, calling for the whole board to resign. Just 4 days after their resignation, the Ram supporters created havoc during their game against Leicester, calling out the duo to come back. Clough was seen on TV that day and called out the club directors for being clueless about how football worked. He was a national icon by that point, and his work with Hartlepool and Derby was well known across the nation. After Derby, Brighton was his next destination, which was an outlier in his career, followed by 44 days as the manager of Leeds. Watch the second part of this series to find out about his clash with the Leeds squad and his European glory days with Forest. So do you think Clough's uncompromising managerial style would work in today's football world? Let us know below.